Happy Wednesday, folks. We have a skeleton crew today, but well, not really, because you never mistake me for a skeleton.
Or me.
Well, I was being kind, Russ. You're skinnier than I am.
Yeah.
Okay, you have pre-show stuff, and I have to bring up something else after that. But go ahead.
So here's the pre-show. So yesterday, I don't know what I was doing at the house. I wasn't watching the Met game. Usually I'll have it up on the computer. And by the time 2/3 of an innings hit, I think it was 8 or 9-0.
Right.
And so I'm like, nothing to watch here. So I didn't watch, right? I did write about it on Sportsology if people want to read it. I went into great depth about the team. But for this is something that goes into what I said yesterday. So apparently with the Mets leading 25-1, Sean Kelly, who's a reliever for the Nationals, allowed 3 runs on 4 hits. He gave up a homer to Austin Jackson, who the Mets recently acquired. He threw his glove into the ground and glared towards the dugout. And so now he gets DFA'd after the game. And it's like, here's the thing. He was frustrated apparently by umpires' calls. This is Rizzo trying to set some sort of standard for his club that hasn't existed all year. His club has been a mess all year. Like, let's talk about the Nationals. They were picked to win everything in the NL East and maybe even in the NL before the season started. And all we've been seeing is griping. You saw the Scherzer gripe in the dugout. Now
Scherzer and Strasburg almost getting into a fight.
Yeah. And so now all of a sudden the GM is doing something, and it happens to happen while they're destroying the Mets. It's just, this is the way this year is. So as a Met fan, yeah, I'm frustrated and it's ridiculous. I would be frustrated as a Nationals fan too, by the way.
Yeah, I don't know what's worse, your team just sucking or your team with the expectation that they were going to be good sucking.
Right. I think that's worse only because they still have the players. Like, most of the Mets players are either traded or injured, not even on the roster. Their players are there, and they can barely get the job done most nights.
What was the worst game that you either attended in terms of either hockey or baseball, lopsided as either a fan or covering it? Because I was like, when I saw that score, and I was in the press box at Coca-Cola Field to cover Vladimir Guerrero Jr.'s debut in AAA.
Right.
Some of the reporters were going back and forth about this game. We're seeing it. It's like 19-0, then 21-1, and it's ended up 25-4. And what game? Like, I was thinking to myself, what was the worst game that I had ever been to? And I can't remember the exact date, but it was like late 70s, early 80s, Leafs Sabres at the Odd. And I believe this was it may have been 79. Somebody else will probably dig it out. It was something like 14-4. It was really lopsided. The Leafs got absolutely destroyed by the Sabres. And that was the worst. I've been to some bad games in terms of lopsided. And last, the AAA game was pretty bad. It was 8-0 in the second inning for the opponents of the Bisons, but it ended up being 11-8. But what was the most lopsided game you can think of?
I can't think of one. I mean, there's just been too many in the history of the Mets that it's a blur. If you want painful, I was at the Matt Harvey game in 2015 when there was all that discussion: should he stay in? Should he come out? Against the Royals, and I was at that game, and I Instagrammed it. Fans were chanting Harvey. Now look where they are. So
this is Game 5 of the World Series, folks.
Yeah, this is the World Series, and so that was painful. That was the last really painful game for me.
Yeah, the first game I ever went to at Yankee Stadium was a game where A-Rod hit his 500th career home run, and I actually have a picture of it that looks like it was from Sports Illustrated. And believe me, I'm a really crappy photographer, so it was.
That's cool. I've seen it. It's really nice.
But that game was like 15-8 or something like that, and it was like 98 degrees, and I think I lost like 12 pounds there in one day, which is a feat, believe me. So yeah, and just to touch on,
I'll tell you the best game I ever went to, and James is already hitting the Z button because he wants us. I don't care. The show isn't just for you. Anyhow, back in when Tom Seaver was going to have a chance to win his 300th game, I had gotten tickets to go see him pitch at Yankee Stadium. And that was a big game. He was with the White Sox. And it was cool because it was hard to get seats. I was able to get them the old-fashioned way, just via Ticketron. And luckily I had a credit card. And so we went down there. That was a day where, like, this guy was my favorite pitcher. So I knew his whole routine, right? I knew I could go down low in Yankee Stadium and I'd watch him lap around the stadium running because that was part of his, pregame program. And fans were, talking to him and such. And then when the game started, it was Phil Rizzuto Day. So wearing a Met hat, I was getting, abused a little bit on that. And there was like a guy, like he could have been, your uncle. And he was like, Seaver's never going to win today. And I'm like, yeah, we'll see. And that's all I would say. I didn't. And what's interesting is I back even then, I would always play softball. And previously I had set up a big softball game. So in that game, I did leave in like the 7th inning or 8th inning because I had to get back to it. And I listened to it on the radio. Obviously, I knew what was going to happen. I could see Seaver pitching as well as he did. So it was actually kind of interesting to listen to the last little bit on the radio because he had gotten out some pretty big players. I think Winfield was one of them where, again, Seaver at that point is around 38, right in that range. And, it was a big deal. He got his 300th win. I attended also Tom Glavine's 300th win in Wrigley. So to see those two things, now Glavine's nowhere near what it meant for me for Seaver, right? But just to see a Met pitcher do it was kind of cool, even though I'm fully not liking Tom Glavine these days.
I had I'll be brief and we'll get to hockey here in a second. I had never been to Yankee Stadium in that game where A-Rod hit the 500th home run. It was my first game at Yankee Stadium. This was 2007, I believe. And I had I'd never been to New York City. So driving in by myself into the Bronx, you have your directions from at that point, like Yahoo Maps or something like that. And you're following directions and you get there and there's no problem. But if anybody remembers what it was like before GPS or before Garmin's, if you're not able to follow the directions to the letter, you're on your own.
Yeah.
And they had blocked off the exit to the Major Deegan Highway because of the traffic. Wow. So they send me down Jerome Avenue in the Bronx. And you're close to New York. You've been to New York many times. That is intimidating. It's like driving in downtown Beirut. It's scary. And the area's gotten
a little better now. It looks better now.
It is. But still, it's like I've heard so many stories about
before they had the parking garage. You used to have to find these little lots.
Right.
Parking, like it was crazy. They had like a series of like 10 or 15 little parking lots, which were awful because you had to walk all the way to the stadium. It wasn't a good setup.
And the fans in Toronto, if they complain about the prices for the Blue Jays, imagine it $35 US the last time I was at the Yankee Stadium to park in the big ramp. But if you don't want your hubcap stolen, you'll pay the $35. Anyway, okay, we'll start the show here. Hello, Hockey World. Today is Wednesday, August 1st, 2018.
I'm Russ Cohen from Sportsology.
And I'm Michael Agello, and this is the HockeyBuzzcast here on HockeyBuzz.com. Some interesting news, and we'll start with the Rangers because focusing on them a bit. They last month they had signed Vladislav Nemestikov, who they had acquired in the McDonough deal from Tampa, to a 2-year deal, $4 million AAV. A couple days ago, they re-signed Kevin Hayes on a 1-year deal for a little over $5 million, and he'll be a UFA at the end of that contract. Yesterday, they re-signed, and he was up for arbitration, Ryan Spooner, to a 2-year, $8 million contract. Now, first, Russ, what do you Spooner scored 41 points last year, did really well, almost a point per game in his game with the Rangers. What did you think of the amount and the term on that deal?
The amount's totally fair. He was one of the only bright spots late in that season. Like, he really came over with something to prove, especially when we heard, he wasn't thrilled that he was traded and yada, yada. Even if you say that, a lot of times when you become a Ranger, because it's fun to play in MSG, because you're treated first class, a lot of players usually move off of that pretty quickly, and they treat players great. And so this was smart because, again, what Jeff Gorton was doing here was saying, hey, I liked what I saw out of you, Spooner. And trust me, Gorton probably knew all about him when he was in Boston. And Spooner was playing, midget hockey. Like, they know about those Boston those guys from that area. I think he's from the area anyhow. But anyhow, getting back to it, he's a center. And these days, you don't toss away a center that you could have control over. That's really the bottom line here. Even though he played great, who knows if he's really it's funny, Spooner's a Canadian. But I don't know where he played his junior hockey. I don't remember. I'm going to look it up.
I'll take a look.
But the thing is, you don't toss away an asset like that and just let them walk away, right? You pay the money. You're pretty sure what you got last year is what you're going to get this year. This year's a transition year. Next year, $4 million fits in easy if they want to keep him. And who knows, will he play center this year or wing? I don't know. I would suspect he's going to continue to play center, but they have a lot of centers. So, that means Kevin Hayes won't be playing center, which, again, if he's only there for a year, probably shouldn't be playing center anymore anyhow. This may signify that. End of the day, it's a great deal because of the 2 years. They definitely can retain him, or they could trade him next year with 1 year term of $4 million. A lot of teams would jump at that if for some reason they're spending a huge amount of money in free agency, like as an example, if Karlsson and Panarin were both available. So you have to look at that. Right now the plan is going according to plan, but if those two guys were UFA, I think the plan would change a little bit.
Yeah, and you look at if you look at Cap Central or Cap Friendly, we're getting the echo here for a second. Sometimes it just goes away. Okay, I think it's gone. If you look at Cap Central or Cap Friendly, other than Zibanejad, they have nobody under forwards, nobody under contract past next season. So the signings of Nemestikov, of Hayes, and of Spooner go to that. Now, I mean, that's great. I mean, that really gives them a lot of flexibility, and not only positionally, like you were just mentioning, but also just cap management. And we know that Lundqvist has, I believe, like 5 years left. Let's see here. No, actually, he only has 2. He only has 2 after this upcoming year. So, their longest contract is Brady Shea, which was just signed. They're in really good cap situation, which for teams like the Leafs and the Rangers during the years when there was no cap and they were spending willy-nilly, and then they went into the cap era and they had a lot of problems for a number of years. This is sort of refreshing that they've sort of gotten their houses in order.
Yeah, Ryan Spooner, as the chat room told me, Peterborough Pete's.
Yeah, and so, Kingston and Sarnia too.
Yeah, I didn't remember that, but I'm sure Jeff Gordon did when he was over there and was probably watching him at a young age. And these guys all keep track of players that they sort of like, because a lot of people thought that the Rangers wouldn't retain Spooner, but I never felt that way. But I always felt like it all mattered down, it mattered about the price. They got him at a good rate. Now you look at the Rangers this year and you say, okay, if they truly let the young guys play with the mixture of, younger veterans that they have, and that's what I would call guys like Spooner and Hayes and everything else. Zuccarello's still there. He could show them how to be a professional. This will work out okay. Cody McLeod, I'm not going to talk about because hopefully he only plays 20 games or less.
Mm-hmm. Well, no,
I'm just saying he doesn't help anybody develop. I know the protection angle, and that's why I'm giving him 20 games, and that's it.
See, I think for that signing to make any sense, he's got to play not every night, but play 50, 55.
Oh wow!
I mean, yeah, because honestly, he's there only for one thing. He is there to if they have young players, he's there to protect them, and if they're going to play Anderson and Cheadle, then he's got to be there to keep the other team accountable if they try to be physical with those young guys. I think that is. I wrote something earlier in the week about Matt Martin with the Leafs, and I know that a lot of Leaf fans were like, get rid of him. He's a dinosaur. This or that. Well, honestly, he was important that first year with Matthews and Marner and Zach Hyman and those 6 rookies. He was important to be there to be, that nuclear missile. And that can be launched in case somebody tries to take liberties. And it didn't happen much, but he was there. And he also was very, very responsible for being a leader in the locker room, and that can never be underestimated. And he developed a lot of friendships in that locker room that I think were beneficial. I mean, he basically took Mitch Marner under his wing, and helped him as a young guy in his first year in the NHL, and that is valuable. They brought in Patrick Marleau to do the same thing. So I'm not saying, I may be overestimating what Cody McLeod is going to do for the Rangers, but I don't think that. Yeah, exactly. Now, another team that we've talked about ad nauseum and will continue to, because they are such a train wreck, is the Ottawa Senators. Now, I'll touch on the rumor that Ek mentioned yesterday, but I'll do that after the news of the day. Cody Ceci, whose arbitration amount, the two offers from the team and from his representatives came out earlier in the week. I believe it was around 3.5 for the Senators. It was a $6 million figure for his agent. They tried to reach an accommodation. They did not. They're having their hearing today. So it sounds like unless they negotiate something in between then and the arbitrator's decision, which is usually 48 hours after, it's going to be a 1-year deal, and that brings him 1 year closer to unrestricted free agency. I think he had three. I think it was. Doing it off the top of my head, I think it was 3 years to go. So there's still room, but there's a wide gulf there between.
Well, like I said, if he had been used more offensively the last couple of years, this would be a worse situation for Ottawa. But he hasn't been, just because of the players they've had. I mean, they've sort of turned him. Hold on, they've sort of turned him into like a defensive defenseman, but that's not really what he is.
Right, and he played most of last season until he got traded with Phaneuf. He was the second in their run to the conference finals 2 years ago. It was Phaneuf and Ceci on the one pair, and Methot and Karlsson on the other. So on that pairing with Phaneuf was going to be the one always to be the guy who jumps up the ice and takes offensive chances, and Ceci would be responsible for staying back. But I think there's more there. Now today, the figures via Elliot Friedman of Sportsnet came out regarding Mark Stone, and if you thought that the gulf with Jacob Trouba was wide, well, this one is $5 million offer from the Senators, $9 million request from Stone. How cheap are the Senators?
Listen, they're just trying to get guys at the cheapest rates they can. We know that. Getting past that, though, what's really going to hurt Ottawa in these negotiations is the fact that not only does Stone score 20 goals, but he had 42 assists.
Yeah.
He only played 58 games, and that weighs in his favor in the sense that he had 62 points in 58 games. So he's more than a point a game. So if you literally just look at it that way, he's going to break the Shea Weber record. He's going to get like 775. That's what's going to happen.
Yeah, I mean, the only thing I don't know if it's the same arbitrator or not, probably not, but I mean, remember with Trouba, they cut it right down the middle. It was 4 for the Jets, it was 7 for Trouba's agent, and they went 5-5. So if they do that, that's $7 million. It doesn't break Weber's record. I have a feeling it'll end up being that, but still, it's like, I mean, honestly, $5 million based on the fact that Tom Wilson got 5.16 is insulting. I mean, if they want to curry good favor with Mark Stone, they wouldn't have lowballed. Now it's like, I mean, I think, and players take that personally. I think that's another step toward him wanting to be gone from Ottawa. You never know.
Yeah. As an example, Erik Karlsson had 53 assists, and he played more games than Stone. So this is a really good year from Stone. Like this is the kind of year. I mean, it's not his career high for points. He's a couple behind that, but this is the kind of year you want to go with and actually go to arbitration. And so that's why I think once they saw the low offer from Ottawa, they were like, fine, we'll test this out. And I think Ottawa should really come back with a middle of the road offer and try and not get this arbitrator to do it, because I think they're going to lose a few million in the process.
Yeah. Now, reported, rumors that he's been hearing regarding Erik Karlsson, and if Erik Karlsson doesn't move, and you're going to hear basically a rumor a week from everybody about Karlsson until the deadline, because I personally, and maybe I'll be proved wrong, I personally do not think he's going to sign an extension with Ottawa. And as you get closer to the deadline, I think the 2 points in terms of where Ottawa can get the most are now before the season starts, so a team can get a full year out of him, either as a rental or to maybe sway him to sign an extension. And right before the deadline, when teams who are contenders see him as a pure rental, but one of the best defensemen in the league, if you add that to a Winnipeg or a Toronto or somebody like that, that would make a big difference. Well, Ack was reporting the rumor that he had heard regarding the Pittsburgh Penguins. Now, if you look at their cap situation, they could not take on Karlsson's $6.5 million salary for next year. But according to what he had heard, Phil Kessel, who has been rumored to be moved, in a possible deal since the end of the playoffs, would be sent someplace else. Ack reported Vegas. Maybe I dispute that, because I think that Kessel would be a better fit in a team like Arizona, because Arizona has got Rick Tocchet, who's a former Penguins assistant coach, who apparently was the Kessel whisperer in Pittsburgh, got along very well with him. And that team, with all that talent, they really don't have that veteran presence, a guy who was dependable to score 30 goals. And with all the talent that they have there, like Galchenyuk and Keller and a few others, they might need a Kessel. But let's just take the Karlsson to Pittsburgh thing. I can't see this being, if there's any validity to this, I can't see it being any more than a 1-year rental, because they just can't sign him long term.
Well, I can't see it being Kessel being traded. I can see it being Chris Letang. There's no way Erik Karlsson is going to be able to peacefully coexist with Chris Letang. Like, there's only so many touches there. I don't want to sound like ancient, but if you go back to when the New York Knicks had Walt Frazier and Earl Monroe in their backcourt, Earl Monroe had to sort of like say, all right, I'm not going to be the usual ball hog that I had been previously. And they ended up being a great team. You can't put those two together. So now who's going to play on the second power play? You know what I mean? You could have them on the power play. I should take that back. I mean, Leach and Zubov were a great power play. You could possibly do that, but you're not going to put them on the same pairing. So which one of them is going to be a second pairing D-man?
Well, that's true, but in terms of the power play, I mean, Karlsson isn't gifted enough of a playmaker that, because most teams now on the power play 1-3-1. They play one guy in front of the net, one guy in the slot, two guys on the half boards, and the one guy on the point, and then they flex the two wingmen on each side. Karlsson is brilliant enough offensively that he could probably play the point wing position, and him and Letang could play off each other. But that's the thing. It's like, I think for Pittsburgh it makes sense in terms of a 1-year rental thing. I don't think it could be anything more than that. But I sort of buy into the sort of discontent with Kessel, and also the fact that Kessel's turning 30. And, it may have been a laughing matter, and a joke when it was Toronto and there was concerns about his physicality and his staying in shape. But turning 30, he might be able to get away with what he's gotten away with in his 20s. But, players in their 30s, they have to devote themselves more physically. And maybe
I think he's done that, actually. I do. When he got hurt last year in the playoffs, I pointed out that in the end against the Capitals, he was taking like less than 30-second shifts because he was injured. But if you look at him normally, time on the ice and how long he's out there for a shift, he does pretty well with that.
Yeah, but that was the dispute, because Sullivan came out after the playoffs and said nothing was wrong, said he wasn't injured.
Yeah, whatever. That's Mike Sullivan covering up for a player. I'm telling you, this guy was injured, and I remember reading online that there were other people that felt like he was injured. There was no reason to put him out there for like 20 seconds and then change him out in a big game.
Yeah. Now, I mean, if like I said, if there's any validity to this, I mean, you would think that, and this would probably be what ends up happening with Karlsson in any deal. It's going to be a package of prospects and draft picks, maybe one player being an NHL player who's young. I don't think that Pierre Dorion is going to get this bevy of return on Karlsson this late in the game. He's not going to get it from Tampa. He's not going to get it from anybody. I mean, Tampa's of the point of view that they may get him for nothing next summer. So why should we empty the coffers to get him now? Unless they, maybe they think at the deadline they can do that, and then
camp opens and some team sees that their number one is out, and then they're willing to make a deal while camp is going. It is possible, but otherwise, yeah, they're going to have to wait till the deadline.
I don't see Tampa giving up Sergachev to get Karlsson.
They won't do that.
Yeah, they'll wait until they don't have to give up a piece like that, or they'll wait until the summer to sign him and roll the dice.
They might give them like Slater Cuckoo and Adam Ernie. They might do that.
Yeah, something like that. But now, little note here. And this, the general assumption has been that there will be an announcement at some point early during the season, maybe at the next Board of Governors meeting or the next General Managers meeting, of the plan, the intention of the NHL to expand to Seattle. Well, there's a report, Associated Press report this morning saying that the Key Arena renovation is going to cost as much as $100 million more than previously expected.
I was going to say, what does a dillion translate to? That would have been good.
No, million. Yeah, sorry. But I mean, Russ, that's not a drop in the bucket. That's something, I mean, I still think that they'll be full ahead for expansion, but maybe this is a bit of a hiccup.
I mean, definitely a hiccup. I mean, I think I told you that I expected some delays in this, and I didn't know that the cost would skyrocket, but it's not an easy fix. It's always – that's why all these places would rather you tear it down and redo it. The Nassau Coliseum aside, most of these places don't want to do the retrofitting and renovating. This is a reason why. But I don't think it'll hurt it. Could it slow it down another year? Maybe, because I don't know what the financing's like. Like if this is double what their budget was for the project, it could slow it down. It could.
Well, I'll tell you, in terms of
what the original quote was, any idea?
It's in the article here. Let's see here. Oakview Group announced Tuesday it had selected blah 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 to partner together as a general contractor for the $700 million. It was supposed to be $600 million. It's turned out to be $700 million.
Oh, so it went from 6 to 7.
Yes.
Well, so that's it's nothing significant.
That's significant. Now, I would say that the NHL timetable, and this is just me spitballing here, I would assume the NHL timetable has a little bit of flexibility, but not a lot, because I am sure that the owners want this team in there before 2022, because then there will be a part of the new CBA negotiations, because all that money, that $650 million expansion fee, goes in the pocket of the owners. It is not considered hockey-related revenue, and I will bet you anything the players want a chunk. Now, the players are getting something because they're getting 45 to 50 pro contracts and jobs out of it, but I'm sure they want some of that expansion money too, and that, and under the current CBA, they're not entitled to any of it, so I would assume that they want to get this done as quickly as possible.
Yeah. Now, here's the thing, though. So looking at an article from Q13 Fox out in Seattle, here's the thing. And so we'll be able to keep an eye on this, because I'll be coming through Seattle at least twice this year, once for the World Juniors, once for the draft. So we'll see construction or not see construction, right?
We'll be driving together from Seattle to Vancouver, yes. Russ. Hopefully this time you won't be sick. No,
I won't be sick. I wasn't sick last year. I know why I got sick, but here's the thing. So it says in this article that they expect approval to take over by late fall and construction before the end of 2018. Right. $100 million could slow that down until next year. If it does, then the 2020 start date maybe gets affected too. I can't say it's a slam dunk yet.
Yeah, no, and also the fact is they're still building this building as a multi-purpose arena to house both the NHL and the NBA.
Right.
And believe me, with the history of the Supersonics and Sonics in Seattle, if they do get an
They
NBA,
did win a championship. We have to give them credit for that.
yeah, 79. But what I'm saying is that there's a history of basketball there, and I'm sure the NHL wants to get in, like in Vegas. They want to get in before the NBA decides to either transfer a franchise or expand back to Seattle. So it's like that's important because you wouldn't think it's important, but it is important because of dates, because of like Vegas. They
remember who drafted Kevin Durant? It was the Seattle Supersonics.
Yeah, and Xavier McDaniel. And there's been a lot. There's been a lot of great.
On that one team, I know. I'm thinking Slick Watts was the.
He's on 79.
Yeah, I think him and Dennis Johnson, right? Wasn't it
Dennis Johnson, Jack Sikma, Gus.
Now, Spencer Haywood was traded to the Knicks, right? So he wasn't there, I don't think.
No, he wasn't there.
Right.
But Gus Williams, Jack Sikma, and Dennis Johnson were the players I remember, and they played the Washington Bullets in the final. Lonnie Shelton and Alvin Hayes.
I still like the name of the Bullets. I don't care what anybody says.
Yeah, well, hey, political correctness. You can't have a team named after something that comes out of a gun. God forbid.
No, actually, Slick Watts was gone by 78. Then he went to the New Orleans Jazz. I was like, what is NOJ? I forgot all about the New Orleans Jazz. Actually had Pete Maravich. Anyhow, we'll get back.
The worst name in professional sports because it makes no sense is the Utah Jazz. They've never had Jazz in
New Orleans Jazz made sense.
Yes. All right. For those in the chat, we're going to be taking questions in a few minutes after we talk about the World Junior Summer Showcase. So start putting your questions in the chat if you have any, and after we talk about the Summer Showcase and the questions, we'll end the show. But go ahead, Russ.
So what for
Summer Showcase?
Wait, Summer Showcase or questions? I got confused. All right. So I got a couple things. I mean, the U beat Canada 7-5. Nobody's seeing these games yet. They start tomorrow. And so my DVR will be started. I actually can't watch the first game until I get back from softball because I have my softball playoffs. Like I have priorities. But these are really glorified scrimmages, though. So just everybody knows. They'll start to make cuts after today. It's interesting because like there's split squads too. Like Canada's obviously got a split squad. And I think even the U.S. now has a split squad.
Yeah.
So, but here's the thing. So the U.S. white team has Quinn Hughes and Jack Hughes, and they both connected today on the game-winning goal. And so Mike Morial got a quote from Quinn Hughes on that combination from his brother, and he goes, not going to ponder it too much. If it happens in the gold medal game 6 months from now, I'd be more excited. So that tells you the difference between what they're doing now and what the World Juniors means. Like, it's a massive difference.
Right. This is preseason, basically.
Yeah.
I mean, it's, we know that this is sort of, I mean, it's to use the term, it's a showcase for these players, for the coaches, for the administrations of Team US, of USA Hockey, of Hockey Canada, Sweden, Finland, to make determinations on players. But I don't think any final determinations are being made. I think you can hurt yourself, but you can help yourself in these showcase games.
If healthy, though, it'll be very interesting to see. Even though Canada is the defending champs, will they be the favorite? They may not be. If the U.S. coming into that tournament, if the U.S. goaltending looks halfway decent, having both of the Quinn brothers, they could be the favorite.
Yeah, it's possible that they could still have
the Quinn brothers, the Hughes brothers. Sorry,
it's possible that they could have Brady Tkachuk if he doesn't make the Senators.
That's true.
Yeah, so I mean, it's very possible that they would be now. They would have a new goaltender because both Wall and Ottinger, I think, are aged out. But the U.S. has a possibility of being a very strong team. Canada, I mean, I know that Morgan Frost played on the top lines for one of Canada's two groups. So, and I think, being one of the top scorers in the OHL last year, he's got an inside track on making the team, and he's 19 years old.
And for Flyers fans, Joel Farabee had 2 goals. Again, now I think people are seeing why I had him so highly rated. I think I had him rated 8th, ranked 8th, and I know where he ended up in the draft. But to me, that doesn't mean anything. I'm just telling you, I think people underrated and undervalued what he could be.
Well, and I know I messaged you about this, and I wrote about it in my post for Hockey Buzz this morning. Timothy Liljegren played on the World Junior team for Sweden and Buffalo last year, and he played very well. But Rasmus Dahlin, obviously as the presumptive number one pick, got most of the power play time for Sweden. And Thomas Monten, who's the Swedish coach, today said to Corey Pronman of The Athletic that Adam Boquist, who's Chicago's first round pick, might be the point guy in the power play, but that would be dependent on whether Timothy Liljegren or Erik Brandstrom, who's Vegas's first round pick, would be available. And looking at the Leaf situation, Liljegren is going to be available because I don't think, unless he just stands on his head at training camp and proves that he's ready to make the jump at age 19, that he's going to be on the Leafs this year. He's going to probably be down in the American Hockey League, and I would think that they would release him to play for Sweden and Vancouver. So. Yeah. I think Liljegren, I think Boquist will make the team, but I think Liljegren will end up being the top guy in the power play, either him or Brandstrom. The other thing, and it's curious how the sort of back and forth that's gone on. Rasmus Sandin, the Leafs' first round pick, he came over from Sweden, played for Sault Ste. Marie last year, had a really good year, 45 points, got drafted late in the first round by the Leafs. At the development camp, he said, I'm going to the summer showcase, and that he wanted to make the Team Sweden for the World Junior. He signs his entry-level deal with the Leafs last month, and all of a sudden, it's from his representatives, it comes out. He's really tired after that long run in the OHL playoffs with the Sioux, and he may not be, or he's not going to the summer showcase. Then Sweden puts out the roster, and his name is on it, but then he's not there. He's still in Sweden, and there is some talk that he may play for Rögle up this upcoming year instead of coming to play with the Sioux, because his brother plays for Rögle and he's got a year left on his SHL contract. So right now it's like we don't know where. We don't know. He's coming over for the rookie tournament, and maybe the Leafs will determine what he does at that point. But it's sort of mixed signals from Sandin.
Yeah, it's mixed signals. He probably would be a bottom pairing guy just based on the wealth of talent, because they do have Philip Johansson, they have Lundqvist, they've got other guys, they have Boquist, they have Liljegren. Like, it would be tough for him to crack that top four. I think impossible, actually. So I think it's best if he does sort of sit back on that. Remember, Rasmus Dahlin got benched at times when he was a youngster in the World Juniors, and that was mystifying. And I'm not saying Sandin is anything close to Dahlin.
Yeah, but Dahlin was 16 at the time.
Doesn't matter. I'm just going by how talented he was at the time.
Right.
And so what I'm basically also trying to say in a very, very correct way is sometimes that coaching from Sweden isn't what you would always hope it to be. They've had some issues where I've seen them jumbling the defensemen and not making very good sense of it.
Well, I'm pretty sure that Rögle was the club team that Liljegren ended up with after playing for 2 or 3 different teams in Sweden last year. I know that, when there was a determination being made about whether Liljegren was going to play with the Marlies or, play for an OHL team or stay in Sweden, that the general manager of Rögle was a former player that played under Lou Lamoriello, and, he basically acquiesced to Lamoriello's wishes in terms of him playing over in North America. Now with Sandin, because he has a year left on his SHL contract, maybe the Leafs want him free and clear. Plus, if he plays in the SHL, his contract doesn't count under the 50 contract limit. And they're up against it. They're at 47 going on 48 now. That might be a factor as well. They figure they can get a year of development out of him in Sweden, and he doesn't count against their pro contract limit, and then they bring him over at age 19. So maybe that's a factor.
Maybe.
Okay, let's take a couple questions. If we have any in the chat, send them in.
They're piling in. First one from Toronto Greenhouse. That's an interesting one. Is the league going to stack Seattle like they did with Vegas? I don't think the league did anything. I don't think the league really – I think the league actually underestimated how George McPhee would sort of work around and circumvent the way they had the system set up with – and really sort of take advantage of the other GMs. Like, I think the other GMs really didn't think about what they were giving to George and what kind of advantage they were giving him until it was too late.
Yeah, and that's what I heard Brian Burke saying on Sportsnet a couple months ago, and I'm paraphrasing here, but he basically said, Vegas got away with it because they played a lot of general managers. Like, okay, these teams like say Anaheim, they didn't want to lose Silverberg, so they made Vegas take Clayton Stoner, and to take Clayton Stoner, they gave him Shea Theodore. Shea Theodore was one of their best defensemen last year. He basically is saying that teams' approach to Seattle will be, you want a guy, take him. We're not going to give you a ton. We're not going to give you draft picks. We're not, if you're doing us a favor, like taking a bad contract off of our hands, fine, we'll pay you for that. But we're not going to give you 2 or 3 assets just to protect one guy. Just take the guy if you want him.
Yep, and that's what they should have done. And that's, we said that at the very beginning of it, like, just take the guy. But then we started seeing all the other stuff that happened, and it was just crazy. It sort of snowballed. All right, so Adam Ziller's asking anything with Ristolainen. I don't think there'll be anything with Ristolainen. I think at this point, now that they've got Dahlin, because you can't count on Zach Bogosian, I think at some point Dahlin will get moved up to that top pairing, especially if Bogosian gets hurt, and they're going to need Ristolainen to bring Dahlin along at least for this year. So I don't think he's going anywhere.
But this is the thing, Russ. He's not going to play on the same pairing with Dahlin because they're both right shots.
Yeah, okay. I mean, that's fair.
Well, but I get your point that they maybe don't want to throw Dahlin to the Wolves and have him play 25 minutes a night as an 18-year-old. Right. But I still think there is that there in terms of the Sabres eventually moving on from Ristolainen. But they might wait to the deadline. They might wait until next year because they have time. He's under contract for, I think, 3 or 4 more years at $5.4 million. So, but I get the impression that they're going to. They're eventually going to move on from him because, from what I've heard from other people is that they don't like his attitude. Now, maybe it changes, but that was the estimation of that organization with not just Bilesma, but now with Housley. And if you're going to keep Housley, and he's come to that determination, unless there's a change of attitude when it comes to Ristolainen, I think eventually they'll end up moving. But it's going to be for what is beneficial for them. Now, it's funny because I was talking to somebody yesterday at the ball game about the Sabres, and
was it the hot dog vendor, was it?
No, it was not the hot dog vendor. It was somebody who actually knows something about hockey, and I was saying I thought maybe a good idea for the Sabres in terms of because I don't know who they're going to partner Dahlin up with. It could be a guy like Marco Scandella, who's a veteran guy.
That would make sense.
Yeah, but if they don't think they have who they want to pair him with, a guy who might be a good fit would be Tobias Enstrom, a veteran, sweet, left-hand shot. Same. Yep. And from everything that we've heard from Peter, a good guy, just didn't work out in the end from in Winnipeg. So I mean, he's probably in a situation where he's only going to ask for a 1-year contract, and if they're looking for somebody to be a mentor, that might be a good fit.
Invite him into camp, right?
Exactly.
Yeah, no, I could see that. All right, so the next question comes from Cameron Young. What are the chances of Houston getting a team either by expansion or by Calgary relocating? I haven't heard much news from Calgary. I hear that Calgary won't be relocating, and this is just political positioning and all that other kind of stuff. So don't worry about –
this is a play for a building.
Right. Don't worry about that happening. But I do think Houston has better than 50% chance of getting a team, but nothing is really set in stone as far as can this Toyota Center take an NHL game right now, or how long would it take to get it ready? It might only take one off season if they really are that close to it being retrofitted, but we don't know. It's never been tested for it. But they could literally get a team overnight if they find out that it is good. So the first thing you would see is a preseason or some sort of game there for the NHL to test it. And so that would be the first indication that they have a chance.
Yeah, I still think it's the parachute landing spot for Arizona. If because the building situation there, and we talked about this before, the building situation there is chaotic. They're not gonna stay in perpetuity in the jobbing.com arena. It's they've been looking for situations in Scottsdale with Arizona State. Nothing with the Suns. Nothing has worked out. If they can't find a deal in the next couple of years, I think they're going to end up picking up stakes in Glendale and moving someplace else. And Houston is a major metropolitan area, and I mean you could if they put them in the same division as say Dallas. Put them in the Central and move Winnipeg to the Pacific, or move them to play against Edmonton and Calgary and Vancouver, and I think that would work. So
I think a good way to test out if they could really have the ice there or not is one summer, maybe even this summer, if the NHL has like their rules committee go there and when they test out new rules. You've
been to Houston, I haven't. You went to school there. I mean, how hot does it get?
I mean, it gets really hot and it does get really humid, but you remember the Gallery, we may not know, I shouldn't say remember. The Galleria Mall there still has an ice hockey rink, and it had one back then, and it's still going strong and people still use it all the time. So clearly that's not going to be a problem. Next question is, this is from Mike Doyle. Do we think that the Pens want to trade Kessel to have room to sign Gensel? He's an RFA after this year. No, because the Penguins had the hammer. Gensel really likes it there. Gensel doesn't even strike me as the kind of guy that's going to ask for something outlandish anyhow, so I don't see it being a problem.
But that might be part of the machinations if they're trying to, because if they trade Kessel away and they bring in somebody who like Karlsson on a 1-year deal, the whole motivation for that, maybe they have no interest in signing Karlsson long term. That's just part of the deal and helps them improve in the short term. And then they let Karlsson go to free agency and they use the money that they saved on Kessel. And Kessel's making 6.8 for another, I think, 4 years. Yeah. Maybe they use most of that or part of that to get Gensel locked up. So I mean, that could be part of the whole factor.
Yeah, and then.
Yeah, it's 4 more years at 6.8.
Okay. And Drew asks, do I think Kessel wants out of Pittsburgh? No, I don't think he wants out.
No. But I think they, like I said, he's hitting age 30. I think that's a concern. I think they're concerned about, if he loses a step, and then you can say this about a lot of players. He is a player who is, I mean, more than most, is really tied to his speed. And if he loses a step, he's not a strong physical player, whether he's going to be able to, how much of a drop-off there will be in his game. And I think there'll be a dramatic drop-off. So maybe they want to do that a year before and not a year after.
Right. No, I can totally see that. All right. So then Tom Dusome asks, do the Sharks load up at the deadline or make a run, or are they not a playoff team? No, I think they're a playoff team. And I do think, I don't know if they'll load up, but I do think they'll make some moves at the deadline if they're right if they're in it, like I think they will be.
I see that this is the thing. The Sharks right now, they signed Couture long term. They've locked up Burns. They've locked up Vlasic. They've locked up Jones. They've signed Kane, but Thornton is in UFA at the end of the year, and this is probably his last year. Pavelski is a UFA. We all assume that they will re-sign him, but he's in his early. I think he's 33 or 34. He's getting to the point where if he doesn't take a little bit of a hometown discount, maybe they say, okay, we're not going to spend big money on him. There's a transition coming here. There's a few core older players that might be moving on. So that's probably what they were thinking about when they tried to make their bid for Tavares. And, we don't know who's going to be on the market next summer, but they're going to have money to spend, especially if they let Pavelski walk. So there's going to be a transition. There might be a want there to do a 1-year thing, but I think that the indication from what they did with Tavares is they wanted a long-term solution.
Yeah, I agree. So now we're being asked, let me see who asked it. Thomas Smith, Russ, what 2 or 3 teams do you consider dark horse candidates to make the playoffs this year? First one, I say Florida Panthers. I know it depends on Luongo, but I think he will have a bounce-back year, stay healthy enough. I think they'll use Reimer a little more in the regular season so they can have Luongo down the stretch. Right. And I think if they do that right and Reimer plays a little bit better than last year because he wasn't great, I think he could accomplish that. The other dark horse team is the Dallas Stars. They didn't make the playoffs last year. I still think they have a run in them. I like the moves they've made. They've got a great coach. It's a first-year thing, so they're going to do anything they can to win for this guy. Tyler Seguin's in his walk year, right?
Yes.
Yeah, Seguin's in his walk year. Like, everything seems to be breaking right. Valery Nichushkin is going to be there. Like, that's a guy who, could even be in there for Calder consideration if he has the kind of year that we think he's going to have. So that's something where I look at the Dallas Stars and say, this could be a really good, quiet year, and they could, make some noise.
I agree with both of those. I think there's an outside chance of a bounce back year from the Blackhawks. If the fact that they didn't make the playoffs and Taves and Kane got some rest, and they've made a few moves. They bolstered the backup goaltending with Ward. I still think there's some. There's a lot dependent on some of the young guys. DeBrincat had a good rookie year. They're going to need him to do that again, and they're going to need Saad to have a much better year. But they, if they can get one more push out of Seabrook and Keith, then I think they can make the playoffs again. But they're coming to the edge of that window, and we've expected them possibly to have to, maybe do that tough thing in the next year or two, and maybe trade one of those two guys. They may have to do that just to be bad enough to finish it at the top of the draft and get cornerstones to rebuild.
Couple more questions, and we're going to go. Vepsis asks, which players do you predict make a similar explosive final breakthrough season, which Hall and McKinnon had? Breakthrough season, I think Nolan Patrick could have a breakthrough season, but I don't think he's getting 100 points. It's not going to be McKinnon but I think he can get close to 60, 50, 55, 58, 60 points, something like that. That would be a nice breakthrough year for him. Mm-hmm. If I was going to look at somebody else, I'm really thinking, even though it's his rookie year, if Kale Yamamoto gets a real chance in this league, I think he can do similar things that DeBrincat did, and maybe even more.
Yeah, especially if he plays with McDavid. I mentioned him earlier. I think Clayton Keller.
Clayton Keller's due for that. That's
nobody is going to get more opportunity to score than Clayton Keller. He's going to be on top power plays. He's going to be top 6 forward. Yeah. And and I think Arizona. I don't think they're going to make the playoffs. I think there's still too many question marks. But I do think that they have a lot of offensive talent and the ability to maybe be competitive later in the season than they were. If they build on the second half of last year, remember they were dreadful in the first 30 games, but they were pretty good in the last 50. So if they
can go from 65 to 85 points, that's possible.
Yes.
Will the Canucks be a surprise team this season? No.
Crap. They're crap. I'm not trying to be overly negative. I do not agree with the philosophy of Jim. Jim Benning has done an excellent job drafting. Besser, Pettersson, Demko is a future goaltender. But the philosophy, which I think is really been put on him by ownership, of patchwork. Like it's like moving deck chairs on the Titanic. Bringing in Jay Beagle, bringing in Antoine Roussel, signing Vanek for a year, Sam Gagner, Michael Del Zotto. It's just dumb. And I don't think maybe they're good supplementary players to help the guys who are there, like Besser, like Bo Horvat. But honestly, you could spend your money a lot more wisely in different ways, and all those players are going to do is make you too good to not finish at the bottom of the league and not good enough to finish in the playoffs. So enjoy mediocrity, Vancouver. You're going to get it.
Last question from Matt Everly. Do I think Hackstall is going to play Andrew McDonald like a first-pairing defenseman yet again this season? Most likely. What are the options? You're not going to put Sandheim in that spot. Who are you going to put in that spot? Mike, if you were coach, is there any other option, really?
I don't. No. I don't see it. Right now, the thing is, from what you've told me, Hackstall seems to trust McDonald as a veteran guy who can be. So I personally don't think he's a top 4 defenseman. I never have, even before they got him from the Islanders. But that's the reality. But if I were them, and again,
now they could go Provorov Gostisbehere, but I just have a feeling they're not going to.
Right. I mean, if it was me, I would push the young guys. I would push Gostisbehere, Provorov. Sanheim would be up there. I'm not sure. Haag will be part of that, but I wouldn't rely as much on the veterans like Gudis and McDonald. I would put the young guys in prominent positions and let them make their mistakes. But because eventually, in a year or two, those are going to be the guys who are going to be your foundation.
Yeah, I think if you put Gostisbehere and Provorov, you're hurting Provorov's offense. And I think that's why you don't do it either, because Provorov showed so much offense last year. Why would you want to possibly take that away from him by having Gostisbehere there, who's going to take a fair amount of shots, right? So I think that's a part of it, although Provorov scored a lot of them on the power play. That's it. Oh, and they want to know how Vlad Jr. looked, and I say go read Mike's article on, where is it?
And Hockey Buzz.
Hockey Buzz, there you go.
Okay, we will be back tomorrow with another edition of the Hockey Buzzcast. For Russ Cohen, I'm Michael Agello. Thank you for watching, and remember, without the buzz, it's just hockey.